My beloved child, pause for a moment and breathe. Before you continue scrolling, before you allow another distraction to take your attention away, allow your heart to become still. You may have arrived at this message unexpectedly, but perhaps there is something inside you that needed to hear these words today. You have carried questions that you have not spoken aloud. You have whispered prayers when nobody was listening. You have smiled in front of people while privately wondering when your season would finally change. You have asked God for a sign, for direction, for confirmation, for strength, and perhaps even for one unmistakable reminder that you have not been forgotten. So hear this message with an open heart: you are not alone. God sees the tears you never explained, the battles you never announced, the sacrifices nobody noticed, and the hopes you were almost afraid to admit you still carry. What feels delayed to you is not necessarily denied. What feels silent is not necessarily absent. Sometimes God is working in places your eyes cannot reach, arranging circumstances you cannot yet understand, closing doors you thought you needed, protecting you from paths you believed were perfect, and preparing you for something that requires a stronger version of you than the person you were yesterday. This is your reminder to stop believing that your current situation is the final chapter of your story. It is not. You may be standing in a season of uncertainty. But uncertainty is not the same thing as abandonment. You may be waiting, but waiting does not mean nothing is happening. There are moments when heaven seems quiet because your heart is being prepared to recognize what is coming next. You have spent enough time asking, when will it happen? Today, ask a different question: what is God preparing me to become? Because sometimes the greatest miracle is not simply receiving what you asked for. It is becoming strong enough, wise enough, peaceful enough, and spiritually mature enough to carry what you once prayed for. My beloved child, you have survived days you thought would destroy you. You have walked through disappointment and still found a reason to continue. You have experienced rejection and still kept your heart capable of love. You have been misunderstood and still tried to understand others. You have lost things you thought would remain forever, yet somehow you are still here. That alone is evidence that your story is not finished. There is still breath in you, still purpose in you, still possibility in you. Do not underestimate what God can do with a person who refuses to give up. You may feel ordinary, but ordinary people become extraordinary when they surrender their fear, follow wisdom, practice courage, and trust God one step at a time. You do not need to know every detail of tomorrow. You only need enough faith to take today's step. Perhaps you have been looking for a dramatic sign, but maybe the sign is this very moment of clarity. Maybe the miracle begins when you stop running after what continually runs away from you. Maybe the blessing begins when you finally release the person, situation, habit, fear, or expectation that has been consuming your peace. Maybe God is not asking you to chase harder. Maybe He is asking you to trust deeper. My child, there are things you cannot force. You cannot force someone to love you sincerely. You cannot force a door to open when it is protecting you from something you cannot see. You cannot force a season to arrive before its time. You cannot force healing by pretending that you were never hurt. But you can choose faith. You can choose patience. You can choose forgiveness without returning to unhealthy situations. You can choose boundaries without hatred. You can choose peace without having every question answered. You can choose to keep moving even when the road ahead is unclear. And when you make those choices, something begins to change inside you. You stop living from fear and begin living from faith. You stop asking everyone else to validate your worth and begin remembering that your worth was never dependent on their approval. You stop measuring your future by your past and begin understanding that yesterday cannot dictate what tomorrow is allowed to become. This is why you must not give up now. You may be closer to a turning point than you realize, but do not interpret that as a promise that something supernatural must happen within exactly 2 minutes or 25 minutes. Let this message be a spiritual reminder rather than a countdown. God does not need a timer to change a life. A single conversation can change a direction. A single decision can change a habit. A single opportunity can change a career. A single act of courage can change a relationship. A single prayer can change the way you see your circumstances. A single moment of surrender can give you peace you have been searching for everywhere else. Your miracle may arrive through something simple, practical, and unexpected. It may arrive as an idea. It may arrive as an opportunity. It may arrive as the courage to leave what is hurting you. It may arrive as the wisdom to stay and rebuild something worth saving. It may arrive through a person who genuinely supports you. It may arrive through a door you never considered. It may even arrive as the realization that what you once called a miracle was actually protection in disguise. So do not limit God to one specific outcome. You may be praying for one thing while heaven is preparing something more aligned with your long-term good. You may say, God, give me this person, while God is teaching you how to recognize healthy love. You may say, God, give me this job, while God is preparing you for an opportunity that uses gifts you have not yet discovered. You may say, God, change my circumstances, while God is first changing your perspective so you will not become trapped by the same patterns when your circumstances improve. This is why patience is not punishment. Patience is preparation. And preparation can feel painfully slow when your heart is desperate for an answer. But remember how many things in nature require time. Seeds do not become trees overnight. Dawn does not appear because the night becomes impatient. A wound does not heal because you demand it to. Growth happens quietly before it becomes visible. Your life can be the same. There may be invisible growth happening inside you right now. You may be learning discernment. You may be learning self-respect. You may be learning discipline. You may be learning to stop confusing attention with love, urgency with destiny, or attachment with connection. You may be learning that peace is more valuable than temporary excitement. You may be learning that a closed door can be a blessing. You may be learning that saying no can protect the yes that is meant for you. My beloved child, do not be ashamed of the season you are in. If you are rebuilding, rebuild carefully. If you are healing, heal honestly. If you are beginning again, begin without apologizing for starting over. If you are grieving something you lost, allow yourself to grieve. Faith does not require you to pretend that everything is easy. Faith means you can acknowledge that something hurts while still believing that pain is not the end of your story. You can cry and still have faith. You can be tired and still have faith. You can be confused and still have faith. You can ask questions and still have faith. God is not intimidated by your questions. Your honest heart is more valuable than a performance of perfect spirituality. Speak honestly in your prayers. Say what hurts. Say what you fear. Say what you hope for. Say what you do not understand. Then become quiet enough to listen, because sometimes prayer is not only about asking for answers, it is also about developing the wisdom to recognize them. There is another message you need to hear today: do not tell everyone everything. Not because you should live in fear or secrecy, but because every dream does not need a public audience while it is still growing. Some people will understand your vision. Others will project their own limitations onto it. Some will encourage you. Others will discourage you simply because your growth challenges the version of you they were comfortable with. Learn the difference between privacy and isolation. Protect your plans without shutting out trustworthy people. Share your dreams with people who have demonstrated wisdom, honesty, and genuine care. You do not need to announce every move. You do not need everyone's approval. You do not need to explain every decision. Sometimes silence is not weakness, sometimes silence is focus. But remember, healthy privacy should never prevent you from seeking help when you need it. If you are facing a serious problem, speak to someone trustworthy. If you are in danger, seek immediate support. God can work through people, professionals, communities, and practical resources too. Do not mistake suffering alone for spiritual strength. You were never created to carry every burden without support. Archangel Michael, in Christian and broader spiritual traditions, is often associated with courage, protection, and standing against fear. Let that symbolism remind you today, courage does not mean that you have no fear. Courage means fear does not get the final decision. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of a new chapter with uncertainty behind you and possibility ahead of you. You may not know exactly what will happen, but you can decide who you will be while it happens. You can be honest. You can be patient. You can be disciplined. You can be kind without being naive. You can love without abandoning yourself. You can forgive without reopening every door. You can pursue success without sacrificing your character. You can desire abundance without allowing money to become your identity.